All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're talking about one of the wildest, most chaotic periods in all of history, the 19th century. I mean, this was a time when the old world of kings and ancient empires just smashed head-on into these explosive new ideas, things like nationhood, freedom, and the right to rule yourself. So let's get into how this pressure cooker century completely redrew the map of the world. And really, it all boils down to this one massive question. Think about it. After Napoleon is finally defeated, Europe is basically a smoking crater. So how on earth do you go from the rubble of one man's empire to the rise of two powerful new empires, Germany and Italy, and the birth of a whole bunch of brand new nations all across the Americas? That's the puzzle we're going to solve today. So, the whole 19th century, right? It was basically this epic tug of war between two completely opposite ideas. On one side, you had the old order. These were the great powers, the kings and emperors, who desperately wanted to just turn back the clock. Their goals were simple: put the old royal families back on their thrones, keep monarchy alive no matter what, and create a balance of power so no one like Napoleon could ever run wild again. And on the other side, you had the revolutionaries, totally fired up by these radical ideas of constitutions, of individual rights, and this powerful new concept called national identity, the belief that if you share a language and a culture, you deserve your own independent country. Okay, part one, Europe hits rewind. So after Napoleon is finally out of the picture, who's left standing? Well, it's the big winners: Austria, Prussia, Russia, and Great Britain. And they all get together for this massive meeting, the Congress of Vienna, with one single mission: to slam the rewind button on Europe.
And what they came up with was this thing called the Concert of Europe. You can think of it like an exclusive club for the great powers, or maybe the world's most powerful and frankly most paranoid neighborhood watch association. Their main job was to work together, using diplomacy when they could and military force when they had to keep a lid on any and all revolutionary movements. It was an international system designed purely to keep the old guard in charge.
Okay, so how are they actually going to pull this off? Well, they had a special toolkit with three main tools. First up, the principle of legitimacy. That's just a fancy way of saying, let's put all the legitimate pre-revolution kings back where they belong. Second, the balance of power. This meant literally redrawing the map of Europe so that no single country could get too big for its britches again. And third, the heavy hitter, the Holy Alliance. This was basically a military promise between the three most hardcore monarchies, Austria, Prussia, and Russia, to just stomp out any liberal uprising wherever it popped up. All right, so now for the spirit of revolution. Because, here's the thing about trying to put a lid on a pressure cooker. That steam, it's gotta go somewhere. And the ideas that the French Revolution had unleashed, liberalism and nationalism, were just way too powerful to be bottled up by a few treaties. And this pressure didn't just pop all at once. No, it came in these waves, these pulses of rebellion. First, you get a tremor in 1820, with revolts down in Spain and Naples. Then, 10 years later, in 1830, a much bigger wave hits, kicking off in France and spreading. And then, bam, 1848. The springtime of peoples. This was the big one, a revolutionary fire that just swept across almost the entire continent. The old order was constantly fighting for its life. So, the big question is, did any of this actually work for the revolutionaries? Well, it was a mixed bag, to say the least. The Holy Alliance, man, they were brutally good at their job, crushing revolts in places like Spain and Poland. But Greece and Belgium, they actually managed to break free and win their independence. Even in France, the 1848 revolution eventually failed, but it still proved that the people could kick a king off his throne. But here's the real takeaway. Even when they failed, these revolts proved one thing beyond a doubt. These ideas, nationalism and liberalism, they were not going away. Okay, now we're going to hop across the Atlantic, because while Europe was just simmering, over in the Americas, that pressure cooker literally exploded. The very same ideas that were shaking up Europe were about to inspire the Spanish colonies to break away for good. Let's break down why this happened. What were the key causes? A huge one was the frustration of the Creoles. These were people of European descent born in the Americas. They were wealthy and powerful, but they were totally shut out of the top government jobs. Those were only for people born in Spain. Add to that economic rules that meant they could only trade with Spain, the huge inspiration of seeing the United States succeed, and then the final trigger: Napoleon invades Spain in 1808. Suddenly, the king is weakened, and the colonies, they saw their moment and they took it. This whole movement was spearheaded by two absolute legends. In the north, you've got Simón Bolívar, nicknamed the Liberator. He freed a massive chunk of the continent and had this grand dream of creating a single, unified United States of South America. Then, in the south, you had José de San Martín, a total military mastermind who was laser-focused on the gritty campaigns to liberate Argentina, Chile, and Peru. And it all comes to a head in one single pivotal year, 1824, the Battle of Ayacucho. This one battle was the final nail in the coffin for Spanish rule. It was the decisive blow that basically shattered Spain's military power on the continent. After this, it was game over. So, they won their freedom. But what happened next? Well, on the one hand, it was a huge win. By 1825, pretty much all of Spanish America is independent, and Spain is basically finished as a major world power. But Bolivar's big dream of a unified superstate? Yeah, that just fell apart. The new territories splintered into lots of different countries, and many of them were plagued by instability and deep inequality. So, freedom was won for sure, but the road ahead, it was going to be a rocky one. Okay, let's head back to Europe now, because all that simmering pressure we talked about, it's about to hit its boiling point. While the old kings were busy fighting off revolutions and watching their empires crumble, the single most powerful idea of the century, nationalism, was about to score its biggest victories yet. The unification of Italy and Germany is fascinating because it's not like they happened by chance. They kind of followed the same recipe, the same blueprint. In both cases, you needed 4 key ingredients: a powerful wave of we are one people feeling, a strong state to lead the charge, a brilliant and, let's be honest, pretty ruthless leader pulling the strings, and a growing middle class that wanted one big, unified country to do business in. In Italy, it was this really cool mix of strategies. From the top down, you had this political genius, Count Cavour, using smart diplomacy and alliances to kick Austria out of northern Italy. And then, at the exact same time, from the bottom up, you get the rock star revolutionary Giuseppe Garibaldi, leading his army of volunteers to conquer the south. The two forces basically meet in the middle, and by 1870, with the capture of Rome, Italy is finally one country. Now, the German story, well, it was a little less romantic and a lot more brutally efficient. It was all the work of this guy, Otto von Bismarck, an absolute master of what they called realpolitik, which is basically politics without the fluff, just pure power. He famously said Germany would be united not by speeches, but by blood and iron. And he meant it. He just coolly planned out 3 short, sharp wars. First against Denmark, then one to kick Austria out of German business for good, and finally a war against France to scare the southern German states into joining with Prussia. It worked perfectly. And this all leads to one of the most incredible, symbolic moments in modern history. I mean, get this. It's January 1871. Where are they? They're in the Hall of Mirrors at Versailles, the very palace of their defeated enemy, France. And right there, the German princes proclaim the King of Prussia as the emperor of a new unified German empire. Just wow. A new superpower is born. So this new balance of power, it wasn't just about adding 2 new countries to the map, not even close. The creation of Germany especially just completely flipped the whole board and shattered the old order that the Congress of Vienna had tried so hard to create. So what did this new world look like after 1871? What were the key consequences? Well, for one, Germany is now the undisputed heavyweight champion of continental Europe, both militarily and industrially. The old balance of power is just gone, and that creates a ton of new rivalries and fears, especially from France. And of course, seeing Germany and Italy succeed, well, that lit a fire under all the other ethnic groups stuck inside the big, crumbling Austro-Hungarian and Ottoman empires. They wanted their own countries too. The old problems were solved, but a whole new set of explosive tensions was created. And that leaves us with one final and kind of haunting question. So you solve one set of problems by creating these powerful, proud, competitive nation-states. But in doing so, do the triumphs of 1871, the birth of Germany and Italy, accidentally sow the seeds of the rivalry and hypernationalism that would explode just a few decades later into the absolute tragedy of 1914? Something to think about. Thanks for tuning in.